What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. One of the bigger announcements coming out of the Hedera ecosystem at the tail end of March was the announcement of HashSphere from Hashgraph, which is a unique Hashgraph initiative. However, obviously leveraging areas of Hedera technology as well. I don't want to get into a whole lot of intros here, but I'm super excited to have Mei Chan, CEO of Hashpack, up here with us today, and Eric Piscini, CEO of Hashgraph. Eric, I kind of want to just ask you an overview as we lead in of the vision for HashSphere and kind of what it represents, and then we'll open it up a little bit.
Yeah, no, and thank you for doing this call, Salman, because I know there is a lot of questions about HashSphere, and I wanted to be transparent and actually engage with the community on this topic. It's very important for us to do that. We did engage, but I know we can do better. So let me give you maybe the starting point, right? The starting point is, and many of you know, I've been in blockchain and crypto and Web3 for 12 years, right? So I'm not new to this. The starting point was that we were getting a lot of inbound for large organizations and even small organizations. And they were saying, we cannot build what we want to build on a public ledger because we have regulatory challenges, data residency issue. Whatever the reason was, they were telling us, we just love Hedera, we love what you're doing, we just cannot build on the public ledger. What can you do for us? And for the last few years, we've been saying, well, you know, we can help you, and then at the end of the day, we were actually losing those opportunities because they were going to a private network, right? So we said, we are tired of losing, you know, we don't want to lose anymore. We want to find a way to bring those organizations into the Hedera world so that they can start working with us with the intention to connect to the public ledger at some point, right? So think of HashSphere as a go-to-market product to capture an intent from those organizations that we could not deliver before, right? And then once we have them, then we tell them, listen, HashSphere is the exact same technology as Hedera, mainnet. You're sitting on the same tech. We are keeping those techs in sync. So if one day you want to be on mainnet, we will move you on to mainnet. If you want to be connected to mainnet but keep your private network, we'll be able to do that as well with bridges. So this is really for us a way to remove friction from the enterprise and large and small organizations, saying, come over, we're going to build with you, we're going to build for you, and we're gonna grow this entire platform together.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I can go on. You know, I have a lot of things to share because I'm super excited about this. But maybe I'll stop here and then we can come back to the other topics.
Mei, I want to make sure if you have anything during this, because I have, you know, that I'll end up taking over this interview. I have like a bunch of stuff written down here. But Mei, if you have anything that you want to inject in as well, feel free, please.
Yeah, I think that this is just a very measured take. It's kind of like if Hashgraph doesn't build this, if Hedera doesn't build this, then these businesses are just not going to be able to build on Hedera, period. And so this isn't taking away potential for companies to build on Hedera, build on the public ledger. It's actually capturing more clients, more people, more businesses to come and build on Hedera and get used to it. And we know from building in Hedera for years that if people are using, say, Ethereum and smart contracts on the public ledger, and they want to do a business that can't use the public ledger, they're used to those smart contracts. So they're going to build something on another technology that still uses EVM, that still uses Solidity. And so why are we not addressing those markets and then getting them used to Hedera, getting them used to Hashgraph? And then when they have other things that need to be built on a public ledger, here you go, you're already familiar with this technology. Or here you see that these big companies are building on this platform. Well, I need to build something and I need a public ledger for it. I'm going to build on the same one, right? So I think that this is a very smart move. I think that it has a lot of potential to bring eyes and interest to the public ledger, even though it itself is not on the public ledger.
Eric, I want to ask you if you wanted to follow up. Feel free, please.
Yeah, I have a few things that I think are really important. The first one is when we engage with an organization as Hashgraph, we represent the entire stack, right? We are not talking about HashSphere first. We always start with mainnet. We always say, why don't you start building on mainnet? Because mainnet has the best technology, the fixed fee in dollars, the council member, the governance, all of it, right? It's when they say no, we can't because we cannot build on the public ledger, then we move them into a discussion on HashSphere, right? So we are not going to push HashSphere competing with mainnet. I want to make that very clear. HashSphere is not a competitor. HashSphere is a way to grow the pie and meet the organizations where they are in their journey of decentralization. That's really, really important message.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's interesting to me is even some of the more recent interviews. I can think of like Boston Consulting Group's BCGX and PwC. BCGX and Urs from BCGX was directly talking about that, and I think he even dropped the Sphere verbiage like a couple of months ago, which was interesting to me. But he said directly that he's like, we always talk about these kind of very crypto native things, but at the end of the day, we're solving real world problems for real world enterprise and institutions as well. And if we can't meet them where they're at to actually uniquely solve those pain points at the point of where we're at right now, from a clarity standpoint, kind of what's the point here? And then as they gain that level of comfort and have solutions that are uniquely kind of positioned to solve their problems, and we have more clarity, I'm assuming it becomes much more easy to bridge them over onto the mainnet in ways that make sense for them.
Yeah, exactly right. Sometimes we call HashSphere the gateway drug to mainnet, right? Because that's the idea. Right? The idea is you come, you consume, you like it because it's great tech, and then at some point you say, I need the bigger ecosystem, I need to go on mainnet, and then you actually end up on mainnet. That's really the way we thought of HashSphere from the very beginning.
I think that there's different points here that you guys break down pretty succinctly in the release here, and maybe we tackle them a little bit because I think it's going to open up a lot of the conversation points. Those are privacy, compliance, interoperability, and then kind of enterprise grade at the end there. So when you are out in the wild with kind of onboarding initiatives within some of these institutions and enterprises, what are some of their privacy needs? Do they tie themselves around GDPR or internal practices? Like, what does HashSphere kind of open up for them so that they can operate privately where they need to?
Yeah, I always almost want to say this is an education gap. Because we all know, being in blockchain for a long time, that when you hash a transaction on the blockchain, the actual data load of that transaction is not on the blockchain, right? So you don't expose data onto the blockchain when you use a blockchain for what we all do. However, many of the organizations we talk to, they understand the concept, but they are still stuck because of their own understanding or because of the understanding of the regulator. They are still stuck with this notion that the data, the transaction that we register on the blockchain is data that is subject to GDPR and other regulations. And for that reason, they say, I can't do it, right? It's an education. It's mostly an education issue, I want to say. I'd love to hear what May thinks too, but I think to me it's an education issue. And that's why HashSphere is a gateway, because at some point the education is going to be good enough and people are going to say, oh, okay, now I understand. Now I can build on mainnet because actual data is actually not registered on the blockchain. So that's one way to think about privacy, right? And one of the reasons we did the private network.
Yeah, a lot of people who are looking into Web3 technology for their business, even if they're enthusiasts, they don't quite understand how the technology works. And so when you tell them that a hash isn't actually the data, there's a lot of education that goes into that, right? And to get them to the point where they can then explain it to regulators or to their bosses or what have you, like that's just a big step. So I think that meeting the clients, meeting businesses where they are right now, and then helping them to get to the point where they can take advantage of the public network, and maybe they don't need to run their own private HashSphere for it. And there's a lot of benefits to running on a public ledger versus having to maintain and run your own HashSphere, right? So it's definitely a thing about getting people in the door, getting people using it, getting people used to it. And then once they're more familiar, then they're like, oh, I can do this. And maybe there's one particular company that understands the concept and then builds a privacy solution that faces these enterprises that need it. And then suddenly everybody's familiar with the idea and comfortable with it. And, but baby steps, right? You have to get there step by step. So
let me ask Eric, this is more of a curiosity point for me. There's obviously tons of infrastructure on mainnet right now, whether it's wallet providers or whatever it may be. Do you feel like it would be okay? Let's say I'm an entity and I'm in X jurisdiction, and I want to launch a HashSphere because of whatever reason I want to launch a HashSphere. Is there the capability, being that there's all sorts of infrastructure already built on mainnet, for some of these infrastructure providers to uniquely solve a pain point for that private network as well?
Yes, thank you. That's a really good point. And actually, that point, you can make that point both ways, right? You can say, because we already have amazing wallet like Hashpack or other bridges or other solution on mainnet, automatically you will benefit from that ecosystem when you launch your own sphere, right? But you can also go the other way around. You can say, HashSphere are big organizations coming and starting to build, and they need a bridge to mainnet, they need a wallet, they need an oracle, they need all of this. And because they are very serious and very well-known organizations, those players are coming to us and saying, I see you're doing something on HashSphere with whoever the client is. I want to be part of that. I want to invest into this. And because they do that on HashSphere, for them, it's going to be very quick to actually do that for mainnet as well, right? So it's like the infrastructure player serving HashSphere, but the HashSphere generating interest from the infrastructure player to build on mainnet as well. I'm really excited about this because I've seen it. After we launched HashSphere, we got really, really good connection with infrastructure player we've been in discussion with, and that discussion accelerates now, because they see that we are offering another channel of distribution, if you want, for them to serve their own clients.
I think what's also interesting is that, and I would imagine this is the case, different jurisdictions have different levels of kind of compliance needs and just to get across the line to start leveraging the technology. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? What HashSphere might open up for jurisdictions that might not have been able to leverage mainnet technology before?
I can give you an example, actually. So it's an Indian, I cannot give you the name, but it's an Indian organization who's trying to build a shared ledger platform for many different players in India. And one of the mandates was the entire infrastructure has to be in India, and the entire data managed for that ecosystem has to stay in India, right? Obviously, you can't do that with a public ledger. And so we said, sure, we can create a sphere for you, an HashSphere for you. We can make sure that the nodes are in India, controlled by the different parties you want engaged. And then we are going to give you an access to all the, the code that we have now in Hyro into the open source project. We're going to help you implement that code. We're going to help you run. We're going to provide you some service level agreements. And we are also going to give you a bridge at some point. It's not available today, but a bridge to mainnet if you want to exchange value between a public ledger and your own sphere. So yeah, that's a very specific, very tangible example. People who actually need a shared ledger to be hosted in a single country.
You also mentioned just now Hyro, and how Hyro, which is the Linux decentralized trust foundations, like the code for the Hashgraph is being ported into this foundation so that it will be managed in an open source way. And this is for Hedera, like in general, but both Hedera and HashSpheres will be based off of Hyro, or based off of that code base. And so when this big organization in India takes and uses HashSphere, and when all these enterprises are using HashSphere, they're using Hyro on the back end, and that is because Hyro, being managed in an open source way by the Linux Foundation, is very trustworthy. And the way that you can like get involved in an open source foundation, if you're a big enterprise that needs to have that level of comfort that this isn't just going to go away by be in control of some private corporation, this adds a lot of trust, and that spills over into the public ledger and vice versa, right? So the fact that we now have Hyro as the open source way to manage the code base is also very exciting, and will definitely bring in more larger enterprises that couldn't just build their entire infrastructure on some private company's code base or API.
I think a really interesting point as well, Eric, is and I was reading it, I think it was in the initial release, like in crypto and blockchain DLT, historically, there's not a customer service line that you can call and get help. You know what I mean? And I think you mentioned, obviously, there's already a pain point from an educational barrier standpoint. I would imagine that's a huge value add to institutions and enterprises when you say, hey, here's the infrastructure, and we're actually willing to help you get across the line to solve problems that you currently have.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, reach out. Like what does that look like? Like I guess even standing up something like that has got to be pretty wild.
Yeah. Again, I've been in this industry a long time. When I was at the beginning of it, I was talking to large organizations, and the question was, who's going to pick up the phone if I have an issue, right? On building on Bitcoin, right? Well, no one is going to pick up the phone. There is no phone to call you. So you need to find resources online and find developers to help you figure this out. This is not an answer you can give to an organization who's going to run a supply chain or a financial platform on the top of a ledger. That's not enough. They will never build their platform if they don't have the level of service. And so obviously that's what we are offering with HashSphere, is that level of service, that commitment that we will be here if they need support. And we are creating an ecosystem around this, right? It's not just Hashgraph doing everything. It's Hashgraph saying, and I'm sure some of you are on the phone here, on the line. We are building an ecosystem. So when you need to be building something, a sphere in Europe, and you need local support, then we have local partners to help us deliver that support to you in Europe, right? So it's not going to be everything done by Hashgraph. It's going to be done by an ecosystem together, which is exciting too. That's how you scale, right? I don't want to hire everybody to do everything around HashSphere. That's not the intent. That's not the idea. That's not efficient. To me, that's an ecosystem play.
And I mean, I can't say anything specifically about this, but Eric has been very open to the bigger ecosystem partners on Hedera and has engaged in discussion. So we're very excited on Hashpack side too. It's just a very good thing for the ecosystem, and we hope that it's going to bring a lot of eyes onto Hedera and bring a lot more like business clients, companies, and everything that we want when we talk about 2 years, 3 years ago, mass adoption and what that looks like. I think that this is a very important step towards that.
I think one of the things is, that's, it's obviously extremely important is like the account abstraction aspects in crypto. And I think that sometimes we interpret like abstracting away the complexities of the technology from a really Web3 native viewpoint. But when I look at something like this, it's very similar. It's like, okay, it's like one less point of attrition that people have to go through to get comfortable with the technology. So the question that I kind of have here is, because like, even if I look up, on hashgraph.com/HashSphere, there's obviously some very Web3 native use cases here where I think of like Stablecoin Studio or tokenized RWAs. So I'll ask you, Eric, like, what are you seeing the most interest right now, like as far as leveraging a HashSphere? Are they Web3 native things that are just like, let's really innovate? Are they Web2 pain points where it's let's really solve some problems here and figure out how the DLT can solve them for us in an environment we're comfortable with? Or is it a mix?
Again, without sharing names, I can give you, we are working with different entities to create stablecoins in a private setting because they cannot afford to have the traffic around the stablecoin to be visible by anyone in the world. Because anyone in the world means really anyone in the world. It means North Korea. It means, anyone can see what's happening. So those people are coming to us saying, I wish I could build on public ledger, but I have to build on a private ledger, at least for now. I will need a bridge because I need to exchange value between that sphere and the rest of the world. So stablecoin is a really good example of that. We are getting a good amount of interest from stablecoin. So I think stablecoin would be, I don't know if it's a Web3 innovator or the Web2 kind of people, but I can see both actually coming our way. And then you have very traditional things, right? Supply chain coming to us and saying, I want supply chain in my country. I want the ability to share data between different parties, but in a private settings. I want the regulators in one country to be able to exchange data in real time between themselves without having to trust one of the regulator to be the central source of data, right? So those are more like traditional businesses coming to us and saying, finally, I have a way to do what I was planning on doing. And they, to be honest, the reason they come to us is because they see us as being more efficient than what they are doing today, right? It's not as much about the decentralization aspect. It's not as much about the tokenization of things. It's more about, I'm pretty sure I can be more efficient if I build my business model, my business workflow on your platform. And that's usually the starting point for us.
I think that's a huge thing because it's not just about cool technology that sounds neat. It's about really solving something that can't be solved with Web2 technology, something that is uniquely served for DLTs and Web3 technology to handle, right? And that's really where you're going to get adoption from, especially big enterprises that are slow to move and slow to adapt, and they've got these 50-year-old legacy systems that they can't change because everything's on it. But this kind of technology can solve their issues, and in a very meaningful and addressing all the things that we know that DLT can do, which is efficiency, robustness, security, and even reducing fraud, all of that kind of thing. Web3 technology is specifically suited to solve, right? So having this kind of mindset where you're solving actual problems instead of just flouting a fancy jargon and new technology, I think that's really exciting, which is why we like Hedera in the first place, I guess.
I think, I did an interview last week with PwC and directly talking about kind of product passports, and obviously under the context of the Hedera ecosystem as well, and supply chain. And you mentioned essentially you can even use an example within a life cycle of one supply chain kind of initiative, there can be 100 and 150 players that kind of somehow touch that kind of supply chain transaction from inception to completion. And I know, Eric, we've been talking about interoperability with mainnet a lot. This is again a curiosity question for me. Do you feel like there's going to be HashSpheres that interoperate with each other in meaningful ways as more and more entities come online to keep portions maybe shielded, but then come over to the mainnet in ways that make sense too? Interoperability even within different network or different entities having kind of private instances on a HashSphere.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question, because when we were designing HashSphere, not from a tech point of view, because the tech is the same as Hedera, but from a go-to-market and from a how do we generate value out of HashSphere, we thought about how do we bring that value back to mainnet? How do we bring that value back to generating traffic on mainnet, right? And that journey is still ongoing. So we don't have all the answers yet on this, which is why we are still in beta, right? Technically, the product is in beta because we thought about different ways of supporting, I'm going to call that TPS on the network, on the mainnet, right? Generating TPS so that we can anchor the sphere onto mainnet and generate value from mainnet. So obviously we do that by having bridges, by working on inter-ledger communication, which is a long-term play that Dr. Lehman-Bear keep thinking and working on with the team and creating that bridge between the HashSphere and mainnet. So I see that on the path. It's not available today, but I see that as not only as a something that we will do, but something that we must do. Right? This is something that we are going to be able to do at some point. Again, we don't have all the answers, and maybe the community can help us find clever ways of doing this, of bringing value back to mainnet, in addition to the anchor of a sphere onto mainnet and generating transaction by using bridges. We thought of different mechanisms to do this, but we are not done yet. We are still on the journey to do that.
Personally, I think that it's just going to happen naturally because, like, let's say we have some bigger organizations in an industry, and each of them, like one of them picks up a HashSphere and starts using it, and they're so successful that other people start using those HashSpheres in their parts of the industry, but they are still in the same industry and they still need to talk to each other. They still need to coordinate, right? And so they've got these HashSpheres and they're like, well, how do we get our data so that we can coordinate between us in a way? And yeah, we could maybe bridge that data over, and we could do it like directly between this HashSphere and this HashSphere. But once you start making a network, how do we talk to each other? And very conveniently, there is a public ledger that you can trust that is compatible with what you've built. That is just right there sitting, that can transfer that data between your HashSpheres. I think that is just going to naturally happen. You're not going to have like a network of HashSpheres that are talking to each other away from mainnet, because mainnet does what that mainnet makes that network happen. Like it's just that easy.
Yeah. I think that the need for a public ledger is tremendous in business, right? The need of having a reference that anyone can trust. That is let's call it a notary, right? So let's say I build my sphere and I have a regulator involved, and they need to make sure that no one is actually changing the data into that HashSphere. I can decide as a business owner of that HashSphere to say, every minute I'm going to notarize the state of the sphere onto mainnet, and because it's a public ledger, no one can touch it, no one can change it, right? And if you as a regulator want to go and verify, you can. Please go, right? Though that's a really good example of using a public ledger in the context of a private ledger.
Yep. I want to ask, as we ramp down here, just kind of forward-looking statements, Eric, and anything we might have missed, what you're excited about for the future of HashSphere, the Hedera ecosystem as a whole, or the wider kind of DLT space. That'd be fantastic.
I'm super bullish on Hedera overall because I see, and the reason I joined Hedera in the first place is first the people, two, the governing council, and three, the technology platform, including the design choices made at the technology platform level, transaction fee fixed in dollar, the different services offered. And what I've seen over the last 2 years and what I see in the future along those three things is pretty amazing. One, I see really cool things being done at the technology level that we will benefit from on the HashSphere side. But this is amazing, right? Blockstream and block nodes are just, you guys have to spend time on this. This is fantastic, right? And this is fantastic, not just for Hedera. It's a fantastic idea that I'm pretty sure others are going to copy because it's a really, really good, cool way of doing things. I'm excited because I think as a brand, as a Hedera, and the brother and sister brands of Hedera, all of us, HashSphere, Hashback, Hashgraph, I think we operate in a very efficient way today, and we can do better. We can operate even better. but I think we are becoming more efficient. And what it means is we have a really strong message in the market. So I'm excited about that. The adults in the room concept, the fact that we are building for the very long term, right? All those things are really good for the trajectory of the project, but for also creating the adoption by very large organizations onto Hedera. And very large organizations, when they come and build on us, guess what happens? It's very sticky. When those big firms build on a platform, they stay on the platform for a very, very long time. Some of you may know I was at IBM for a very short period of time. IBM revenue is still a huge amount of that revenue is still on mainframe today because it's so sticky, right? And I want to become that. I want to become the same, stickiness, and that to me is important. And of course, the people is where I'm also very excited about still. Men and women are very active, as you know, still in the ecosystem. People like me, people like you, Solomon, being active and supporting the ecosystem. I think that's fantastic. So I'm trying to find a reason not to be optimistic, and I cannot find one. So that's a pretty good sign.
May, if you want to lead us out here real quick with your closing thoughts here, and we'll ramp it down.
Yeah, I think that aside from everything that we talked today, which is very exciting, one of the great things about Hedera is our community and how positive we are, how supportive we are, how technical we are. I think that the Hedera community is a very tech-forward looking community that wants innovation, that wants to see adoption, that wants to see real businesses come into Web3 and not just continue on with the way things are going that every other blockchain is doing, right? So definitely as a community, you should reach out to everybody let people know why HashSphere is exciting, why Hedera is exciting, and just get people to start to recognize the Hedera name so that we can get more excitement in this ecosystem as things come on, because I'm really optimistic, just like Eric is, about everything that's coming onto the network. So yeah, can't wait to see things start to move.
Well, I want to make sure I let everybody know. Make sure you give at Hashgraph a follow. You can check out Hyro at lfdecentralizedtrust.org and go to genfinity.io for just tons and tons of content, and hashgraph.com/HashSphere as well. Hang out with me here for 1 second, guys, as I ramp this stream down. Thank you so much to Eric Piscini, CEO of Hashgraph, for joining, and Mei Chan, CEO of HashPack, for joining. Hang out for 1 second, guys. I'll ramp this down, and thank you for joining today.